Hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Put in where you are zooming in from. Here we go. We got another pup. Yay. This is true, man. He wears diapers, but we won't shame him. Grand Rapids. Look at all those birthday cakes. Who was able to do that? Happy birthday. Ohio, Seattle, New York, Delaware, Austin, Hatfield, PA, Philly, San Diego, Wichita, Kansas. I think that's the first time I've seen that. All right, we are going to jump right in because there's a record number of slides, and I apologize for all of the words. There's really no other way to break down a 160-page manifesto that is seeking to basically erase us. There is no other way to put it. And so the only way to break down 160 pages is with, words and summarizing. And so I'm going to jump right in. And before we jump in, actually, this is something that I was thinking of based on the last LQA where I asked for shares, is the overall gist, unfortunately, of the substance of what we talk about every other week is not so positive, because that's just sort of the world in which we live. And so to break down the most important things that are happening for the LGBTQ community, they tend not to be very positive and or affirming and life-giving. So in order to combat that, before jumping in to the depressing nature of whatever that particular topic is, I want to start with positive shares. So we do questions at the end or shares at the end, but just to sort of prime our minds and do some positive shares of just what happened to you this week that was awesome, what is going on in your life that is worthy of praise and accomplishment, that you're proud of, that you're grateful for, anything that comes to mind. So if anyone wants to share, just raise your hand. Um, all right, Neil, go ahead.
Okay, yes, hello everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're green, but other than that,
Yeah, right, great. So yeah, I have this. All right.
there you
Well,
go.
I have something to report grateful. So last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, I had mentioned I was very interested in copying California Assembly Law 1537, which prohibits any local law enforcement for working part-time for ICE or DHS. And I wanted to have that copied here in Ohio. So I did, and coincidentally, the Ohio Democratic Caucus has had a press conference last week, and they were introducing 8 bills to limit what ICE and DHS can do here in the state of Ohio. So I kind of took down all the names of the press briefing and those attended that were in the caucus, and sent them all emails and said, please do this, include this in one of your bills. So some of them responded. I know that I'm grateful that at least they're moving forward with trying to limit what ICE and DHS can do. And if any of you have been following any of this, Springfield in the lower part of Ohio, in the southern part of Ohio, is where there's a large Haitian community, and their protective status was removed, and they were anticipating that ICE would ramp up there, but it hasn't yet. So we're kind of waiting. But I am glad and I'm very grateful that the Ohio Democratic Caucus, now I know who they are and which representatives those are in the House. And then the Senate is trying to do something, but it's more, of course, there is opposition from the Republican side of both the House and the Senate in Ohio that is, introducing their own laws. And so, but
Mhm.
anyway, I'm grateful for that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. And sort of a political advocacy point to that is that legislatures, um, on whatever side the legislation that you have that you want to see in your municipality, town, county, whatever it is, being able to copy and paste what was successful elsewhere in a similar place is so helpful for a politician. If you just hand them something and say, this was approved and voted in and is hugely successful over here, and I'm just going to hand you the playbook on how to make your whole constituency super happy right here, and you don't have to do anything. They're going to take that as called copycat legislation. We tend to see it negatively impact us. And when Florida came up with Don't Say Gay, within 3 days, there was Don't Say Gay legislation in 12 states because it's copy and paste. If it works elsewhere, it will work if you have a similar constituency. So for everyone here, right, if you are in a different place than Neil's very specific location in Ohio, you can take this, reach out. Here in Philadelphia, we have something similar that has already passed. Rue Landau is a lesbian. She's our very first city council at large person in Philadelphia who's LGBTQ plus. So we have it here, but depending on where you are, that's an awesome thing that you can do that will likely get approved. And your state representatives will be super grateful to you. Leah, go ahead with your share and then we'll jump in.
To see everybody. Nice to see everybody. It's good to be on the call. It feels very inclusive and very positive, and I'm very grateful for the community. I think things are going well, and I feel inspired by community. I think over the long haul, I mean, I've lived in Philly my whole life. I don't live there now, but a lot has gone on, and we have always kind of we always rise above all that, right? So I know it's hard, but I feel good. I just finished for work. I just finished a certification and for anti-trafficking, which is great. And I find that in work, the LGBT community, even though it's a challenging topic, is very included in getting services and finding services. And with regard to ICE, they need a signed warrant. I don't know if people know that, but like if you encounter ICE, they need a warrant signed by a judge. They can't just come in. There's one that looks like it's a warrant, but it's not signed by a judge. And you don't have to like open the door. You don't have to like share. You can ask those things. So that's an important point for ICE. Like there has to be signed by a judge to kind of, but anyway, I'm happy to be here. It's nice to feel like success in life and moving forward, and be with people that want good things for the LGBT community, right? It's like we've been through a lot, we're going through a lot, but we always do well, you know what I mean? So it's thank you for, letting me be on the call, and thanks for all you do, Happy birthday.
Thank you. So yeah, Leah shared a picture of the certificate that they got last night, and that was sort of the inspiration behind the positive share. I'm like, oh, I think everyone should know that. And you know what? Before we get into this depressing thing called the Heritage Foundation's 250-year manifesto to erase us, why don't we have a positive share? So thank you, Leah.
Of course.
All right, so we'll jump right in. All right, 40 slides. This is a record, folks. And I was telling Jen before we hopped on that we'll likely do a take two on this because you'll see how I divide this up. I divide it up between, what it is, what this manifesto is, dive into who it impacts initially, why everyone should care, because it's called Saving the Family. I don't have kids. Right? A lot of us on this call don't have children per se. It's a look over here while we're doing this over here kind of thing. So why everybody should care. I feel like this has not gotten the attention that it deserves because for the exact reason that they wanted to, it is cloaked in saving the family. And so if you don't have a family, then you're just sort of tuning out. Right. And then what folks can do ultimately. So after we go through everything, getting your feedback either by emailing us or in the chat or asking your questions on what you want to hear more about, and then do a second presentation that is tailored to that as opposed to this macro where we're hitting on sort of everything. All right, so as always, don't need to tell this group, but be respectful and kind. We were kind of born that way, but still feel the need to say it every time. The Heritage Foundation proposal is the agenda. Our next LQA is the 24th. And life hacks. So I'm going to start making these mandatory. I am guilty of it as well. That when I first started this out, it's like as much law. The law is what you're all here for. Legal, queer, and A. It's in the friggin' name, right? Legal, queer, and A. But I'm super passionate around the things that keep us healthy, thriving, not just surviving, right? So knowledge about what's happening helps us survive. But then, the positive shares. What are you grateful for? What are you proud of? Like, it's the woo-woo stuff that whether we like it or not, keeps us going on a daily basis. And so I'm really going to be intentional about including that both in the school community. And again, if you're on here, but you're not in school, so the school community is where we keep in touch between this. So you have social media, where, we post every once in a while and we may engage in comments or whatever, but you have social media. Then we have this twice a month for an hour to an hour and a half. Then in between this, we communicate via school and everything that I have via, like I have tomorrow, I'll be at iHeartMedia recording my once a month radio show. That's not available to people nationwide, only in the metro area with the 1 million folks within the Philadelphia area. So we're going to put that in the school community. I write for law.com. It's stuck behind a paywall. We put that for the school community, since it's private and I know it won't go much further. So there's content and things available to folks off of social in the school community. All right, so we'll jump right in. Special report. And again, this is all from their perspective, okay, until we dive a little bit further. So why they wrote it: Saving America by Saving the Family, a foundation for the next 250 years. So the foundation piece is key. This is so strategic. The Heritage Foundation set themselves a 50-year timeline with which to overturn Roe v. Wade. And they accomplished it in 49 years, 5 months, and 2 days. They are exacting. They are relentless. Okay, so yes, it says for the next 250 years, but the foundation, out of all those words, I see foundation. And it's very, very important that as we go through this, you remember how this is setting the bedrock of then everything that comes later. So demographic decline, later marriages. The national marrying age is 31 for men and 29 for women. It is, I do a ton of prenups nowadays because people are not, the first pots and pans they're getting is not at 20, when they do their engagement party. People are getting married with 401ks and houses and all of the things. Fewer births and what they frame, mainly because of us, as cultural decay. Okay, and they highlight that. So their manifesto is framed as the only response to the demographic declines, later marriages, fewer births, and cultural decay. This is the only way to save America. They center on an explicit hierarchy of family forms, reject the idea that parents are interchangeable, that mother-father is interchangeable with any other subset, and that policy should favor, this is a direct quote, should favor natural marriage over same-sex, polyamorous, and cohabitant relationships. So I have a lot of folks that have been reaching out over the last year saying, we're never going to get married. Screw that. We don't want to be on a list. All of the things still encompassed in this manifesto by cohabitating, and single parents. Also discussed at length in here that if someone just wants to have a child on their own, they will not be counted. So what natural marriage means in their design: they define marriage's essence clearly as tied to male-female. We've known that since January 20th, ultimately, but male-female reproduction. I mean, this is Handmaid's Tale. I barely had enough time between all of yesterday and right up until 11:53 to finish this PowerPoint that I didn't have time to add in little graphics. But if I did have time to find pictures associated with it, there'd be Handmaid's Tale all over this thing. So as tied to male-female reproduction, and then norm setting for law and policy, that male-female natural marriage will then set the law and policy. Preferred family is not just cultural, it's intended to be administrative, financial, deal with taxes, all things legal. Okay, so preferred family, based on their manifesto, is not a cultural thing. It is built into the government and what the government sees, what the government acknowledges, what the government recognizes, both from an administrative standpoint, financial, meaning taxes, and legal. All right, then the enforcement model. With every type of law, policy, whatnot, you need a way to enforce it in order to make it real. So, and this is very strategic and brilliant. We think, I feel like your average, LGBTQ person and or, Democrat is thinking around headline bans on things or the overturning of Obergefell. Right, the overturning of, and just if that isn't happening, if that's not in the headlines, then we're safe. They have walked away from that because, first of all, overturning Supreme Court precedent takes a long time. They set themselves on a 50-year timeline to overturn Roe v. Wade. They don't want to wait that long. So we need to stop waiting for headline things because it's happening. This has already started to happen. The foundation has already started to be set. And so doing it in three main ways, which has been started as of January 20th, definition setting. We've seen that all year. Spending power, we've seen that. Removal of federal funding on XYZ to make this institution do that, right? So the power around money and how the government wields it, how the government defines people and or relationships, and then litigation around it. Set posture, setting themselves up for future litigation. So again, this is all foundational. So it's posturing for how do we set up so that when there is litigation around this, we're set, we're solid. So mechanism number one is definition setting. So the federal government has already defined sex as between male and female. It's in an executive order, hasn't been dealt with yet by the Supreme Court. Again, that's the litigation posturing piece, but they are moving forward on it. Gender identity as a legal category and changing that and the outcomes that then, basically negating it, erasing gender identity and all civil rights associated with it, defining natural marriage, and then determining who counts, who's valued, and the hierarchy, again, based on that definition of natural marriage. So government agencies, and they've all been tasked with beginning this process, government agencies get to revise guidance and compliance long before, with or without anything changing in the courts. They just get to do that. They're at the federal, they're at the executive's discretion, and so government agencies are going to start revising, have already, and then institutions comply early because funding is necessary, the money piece. So definition setting is mechanism one. Number two is the spending power. So again, the report does not need to ban marriage equality in order to effectuate the exact same reality. Instead, it uses a much quieter tool, spending power and eligibility rules. So they've already started doing this. They have the Trump accounts, then they're going to have the Nest potential accounts and the FAM credits, which you've heard about. So those two aren't law yet. They don't exist, the Nest and the FAM, but they're designing them. So design new credits and benefits. And if you qualify, if you meet the natural marriage and meet all of the definitions, then you get money and support. And if you don't, you're outside of. So again, new government incentives. These don't exist. This is proposal. Okay, these are proposals. The FAM credit proposes a new tax benefit called the Family and Marriage Credit. FAM, Family and Marriage. To qualify, you have to be obviously married. Filing joint. You can't even be married and filing separate and have all of these things. You must file joint. Raising a child, and both tax filing adults are the child's biological parents. So that last piece of the sentence is everything because that's what excludes us. That's where we get erased. So it excludes most LGBTQ married folks raising kids because both spouses typically are not the biological parent of the same child. Even with reciprocal IVF, most states, all except for a couple, recognize only the gestational mother. So even if you're the genetic mother, but someone else is the gestational mother, you're not both considered. So both tax filing adults have to be the child's biological parent. And then draws a bright line around adoption, says adoptive parents would not be allowed to claim the FAM credit for additional adoption children. So if you had 9 children biologically with your spouse, so the breeders breed 9 children, I think the credit is $17,760. It's close to $18,000. They would get 9 times 18,000. 100% incentivizing breeding. And then LGBTQ folks who have 5 children through IVF or surrogacy, nothing. And then if you adopt from foster care or through a private, you're limited to 1, even if you adopt 5 times. So even if you adopt 5 times, you'll get it once, but none whatsoever if you undergo artificial reproductive technology and or surrogacy. All right, then the litigation piece, repeatedly asserting a child's claim, that it's in the child's best interest to have a mother and father, redefining the government's interest, so future cases become so much easier to argue. Now, we didn't get a chance to really delve into it. We did a little bit, but the Hecox case, we did an LQA around Little v. Hecox and how the case itself is around trans folks being able to play sports but that it's not around that. It's really around the Supreme Court deciding what level of scrutiny any case involving LGBTQ issues will get. So in June, and we'll talk more about that because it's part of this foundation. Hecox in June, us getting the decision that I think we're going to get, will make this foundation so much easier to set, if you will. So this redefines what the government's interest is, so future cases will become easier to argue. If all they need is rational basis, per the Hecox case, then they will win on this time and time again. So translation, even if marriage equality is not immediately overturned, this framework will be used to destabilize our parental family units, LGBTQ+, and gives hostile parties language, and it gives decision makers permission to recenter an ideal family form. So again, assisted reproductive technology and surrogacy immediately on the chopping block, says commercial surrogacy is despicable, quote, morally wrong, and argues that it should be banned globally, not just in the US, but minimally in the US, but advocates for global banning of surrogacy. Their claim again is that the surrogacy intentionally, why it's despicable, is you are intentionally depriving a child of a mother and then treats the surrogate and the child as a means to the adult's end, that it's the most selfish and despicable thing an adult could do. Obviously, why that matters is, other than adopting in some way, shape, or form, this is the primary means by which gay men, form families. Okay, so then many, and again, gay male couples, surrogacy is the primary route. If surrogacy is restricted, families don't stop forming. If they make it harder for us to go through IVF, if it's no longer, paid for by employee benefits, and a lot of my clients will get a $5,000 Comcast, I think it's $15,000 for adoption credit to go through the legal process, let alone the IVF process. So it'll just cost more. Folks will go internationally. I have a lot of my gay male couples using a surrogate in Mexico right now, but the legalities around it are obviously risky. Inconsistent parentage rules, and a ton of legal vulnerability. So technology. This is probably the only thought that I agree with them on. that AI is negatively shaping dating, marriage, and parental authority. I mean, there's like hundreds of thousands of people dating their AI bot right now. So, but they recommend policy structures to govern it. I do not. This is, this, Republicans are supposed to be like government out of everything. This is just complete. This is not, we're way beyond. I know everyone on here knows this. We're way beyond red and blue. This is not a Republican issue. This is right-wing conservative, authoritarian regime type thing, because true Republicans don't want this. But anyway, cite the chatbot companions and argue that these stand in the way of real relationships and undermine family formation. And they propose a White House family and technology working group in order to deal with it. All right, how these restrictions will actually impact in real life. Fewer safe, lawful family planning options in your state, more dependence on travel and out-of-state clinics, more uncertainty about parent recognition, especially across state lines. So there's a lot of blue states, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire. A lot of blue states have parentage affidavits or judgment of parentage where within your state, but again, across state lines and or internationally, then that becomes super vague. And then more disputes if someone passes, the gestational mother passes, what about the other parent, or a crisis happens? So why people who do not have a family need to pay attention.
Yes, at 1:30. Did you go inside?
So why people who do not have a family need to pay attention. It's the first time we're seeing implemented in the US a blueprint for a hierarchy of personhood, ultimately, our own caste system, if you will, using family because it's the easiest thing to use, but they're just using it. Using family and favoring natural marriage over same-sex relationships as the mechanism to do it. So even if you never want a spouse, you never want kids, because this obviously completely implicates married folks as well. So families and or married folks. But if you never want a spouse and never want kids, you're still living in a country that is trying to restore a model where legitimacy flows from a narrative where we don't exist. And then these are the downstream, and not even downstream, they're the adjacent. They're immediately, these next institutions are immediately impacted after this foundation is set, because you have to then live out their family policies. Education and institutional reshaping. So explicitly connects family formation to education policy. We've seen this with book banning. We've seen this with sex education, right? But the Supreme Court case saying you can keep your kids out when we're going over that LGBTQ book, right? So explicitly connecting family formation to education policy, winding down the Department of Education, first and foremost, scaling back student loans. Why are we marrying later in life? Because women are going to college. How do we make it so that more people can't go to college? We take away federal student loans and promote curricula that teach relationship, parenting, and financial literacy, plus their success sequence. Their success sequence, which is ultimately get married, go to school, get married, have children, in that order. That's a success sequence. How it enforces culture through institutions. Student loan repayment should be dramatically scaled back because it reduces delays in marriage and family formation. And then school becomes the mechanism for their preferred way of life. Impact on benefits and protections that aren't family benefits. So they are recommending the entire government and every and all agency approach this and screen. So every government agency have screening programs for whether they support, whether the policies within that government support the success sequence. These are crazy terms. The success sequence and family formation. Who gets prioritized in housing, government grants, government assistance, workplace, schools, how they handle sex, gender, identity, which organizations get funded, which don't, which get targeted. And then again, even if you're single forever, you still interact with employers, landlords, hospitals, schools, and government forms that are looking to identify folks. Targets gender identity as a legal concept. The report calls gender identity incoherent and urges the government to preserve sex distinctions as it has in executive order, but not yet in law, and replacing gender identity. And this obviously affects trans folks directly, but it also affects anyone that has desire for privacy, autonomy over their identity docs, medical decisions, and workplace protections. This is a big one. Again, this is part of that foundation. It expands religious exemptions as a governing tool. So religious exemptions, we've been saying for decades, has been used to legitimize discrimination. It is a part of the foundation. They endorses robust religious exemptions and equal treatment for faith-based institutions. And that doing so is central and essential to rebuilding family life. And again, this will show up in all of the areas of life that impact all of us: employment, housing, healthcare, education, for people who are single and child-free. Religious exemptions as a governing tool, one of their most powerful tools in their toolkit. Reshapes education and economic pathways. I think that's a repeat. So they're really 39 slides. Is it a warning? It is rather a warning sign about how policy will be made. So ultimately promoting governance that is no longer neutral. There's a hierarchy that they've, determined, and definitions that they've set, new terms. Natural marriage as defined per the government, success sequence as defined per the government, and will impact every aspect of our life. So why use family? Why this starting point? Why this as the foundation? Very, very important. Family and how it can be used in news broadcast sound bites, in litigation, all of the things, again, super strategic and brilliant. It's a moral frame and perspective and way of looking at things that makes everything else they want to do easier to sell, because they do so in the name of family values. They do so in the name of, saving the family and children. So the report itself treats family policy as the foundation, then argues that all of these other systems, employment, education, assisted reproduction, housing, should be evaluated by whether or not they support or undermine that foundation. Healthcare reform, housing reform, all the things, that framing gives them the moral high ground and makes opponents of it anti-family, as opposed to anti-healthcare reform or whatever. Like, anti-family is a lot harder to sell to your constituents than being anti-healthcare reform. It's cross-cutting. It is the one topic. It is the one topic that cuts across everything. So you embed in this and make this your foundation. Once you're successful at that, you've hit everything else. Now you just need to set your policies in those different agencies. Family touches education, it touches taxes, it touches welfare, it touches culture, all at once in one fell swoop, as opposed to having to treat each of those as individual things. So they get to build a hierarchy and a caste system that ultimately erases us without them ever having to say out loud in writing, even though they kind of did through this manifesto, because we're mentioned like however many times. We are targeting LGBTQ people. A direct attack on LGBTQ rights would trigger a massive backlash, as opposed to pro-family. And then moving forward with all of these things, while it has the collateral result of targeting LGBTQ folks' identity and their existence. So an example, the FAM credit, the report proposes that it be written as married joint filers plus both adults or biological parents, which excludes LGBTQ families without needing to say so. Okay. And then once that is accepted as foundation, copy paste, just like the legislation that we were talking about when Neil shared, right? Copy paste. Once it's embedded in the family context, and family already touches all of these other government agencies and all of the other silos, then it's copy paste. It's copy paste for everyone else. And it's all done under the rubric of pro-family. And then again, sets up the legal argument that they want courts and government agencies to adopt. Courts always have to ask when they're looking at a law, what is the government's interest here? Again, this is Little v. Hecox. It was too much to do a refresher on the Hecox case and how that tees this up. Again, everything is so strategic. They are taking their time. They are doing everything little by little. They're not in a rush. Roe v. Wade, 49 years, 5 months, 2 days. Okay, courts will always ask, what is the government's interest here? When it negatively impacts a group of people and has disparate treatment, in this case, LGBTQ folks, then the government has to decide what level of scrutiny. If the Hecox case gets decided the way that I think, which we'll find out in June, now we'll go from intermediate scrutiny for definitely trans issues, and they sort of vacillated back and forth on LGB issues, whether we were like, strict-ish, kind of, or intermediate-ish, rather. But then I believe it'll be rational basis moving forward. Courts will always have to ask, what is the government's interest here? If the standard that the government has to meet is rational basis. If you remember my example from, I don't know, maybe it was a month ago now, so you probably don't. Strict scrutiny is pole vaulting, Olympic pole vaulting. Intermediate scrutiny is like college level pole vaulting. Rational basis is stepping over the sidewalk. 99% of government laws will pass muster under the rational basis. So this would pass muster. Builds a coalition that is much bigger than one policy fight. So instead of fighting healthcare reform, instead of fighting the tax credits, instead of fighting education around book banning, instead of fighting, all of those are singular fights that we have to do. Instead of doing that, it builds a family coalition that impacts all of those things in one fell swoop. A family first platform unites religious conservatives, cultural conservatives, under one fell swoop that then deals with healthcare, housing, education, and civil rights enforcement. The implementation advantage. This is what I was talking about earlier. A family policy moves so much faster through tax and administrative channels. It's so much faster to create this family policy and set this foundation than overhauling the entire healthcare system, or rewriting the tax code, or rewriting housing law. Each of those would take multiple presidential, sittings, 5 to 7 years. It's just not going to happen. Much easier to just add eligibility condition, tax credits, preferences, than it is to pass a full healthcare overhaul. So the strategy is build the foundation and the vocabulary, the definitions, and then apply it everywhere else. Copy paste. And then the narrative. So they start with the family because it's a good story, the narrative that justifies the rest. And courts, if they just need rational basis, it'll pass muster. So what can we do? From a practical standpoint, how to protect ourselves. 50 years ago, we were predominantly worried about hostile family members. Now it's less so hostile family members, but 100% of us have hostile government, hostile policy, right? We used to be invisible in the eyes of the government. AIDS, what? Huh? No, right? Now I wish we'd go back to being invisible, but now 100% of us have hostile policies. So being practical, I always say, don't be scared, just be prepared. there are proactive things, how you fight legal erasure is through legal documentation. Period. How you fight being erased legally, both our identities from gender identity, sexual orientation, all of the things, is through legal documentation. Focused on what will fail first is our legal recognitions, our legal identities. So paperwork, access to said paperwork, and create your own, do your own legal paper trail. The goal of everything that you do, as far as how do we protect ourselves, the goal is to reduce disruptions, reduce any questions that anyone would have, government, court, other people, friends, family, and confusion by having everything in writing. Not just in death, right? A lot of things happen in life as well. The Who Speaks for Me. These are the 9 essential LGBTQ estate planning documents that I recommend, the 3 healthcare trifecta docs, the 3 legal financial docs, and then the 3 what I call companion docs. Within the school community, I was talking to Jen about this earlier. And again, if you're not a part of the school community, join the school community. It's where we meet in between these LQAs. And we're going to do additional webinars. We'll do an estate planning one, but also there's a lot of dialogue going on in there. Ted, who's on this call, is now moving to Japan. I saw right before I got on here. So there's a lot of talk about leaving the country. And I did one of these LQAs on how to inexpensively, safely, easily leave the United States. And so we're going to do another one in there. So I'll do an LGBTQ estate planning webinar in there, as well as just moving about the world in there. So we're not going to touch on estate planning today, but chosen family. Super, super important for all of us is make your circle legally real. All right, take the Golden Girls crew and make that legally a thing, legally real. Name your people, and either if they're not at the level that you want them to be your powers of attorney, totally fine. At least give them HIPAA waivers. I deal, fortunately, unfortunately, always depends on who they are, but I deal with a lot of financial advisors and doing estate planning for 18 years. And, so many people are worried about their retirement portfolio for when they retire. Instead of being worried, rightfully so, but just about your financial portfolio, folks should be just as worried, if not more, about their social portfolio. As we age in this country, let alone being LGBTQ+, but especially post-COVID, the level of isolation has increased drastically. And so, and I have folks, older, LGBTQ folks, no children, I'll never have children, right? Like older LGBTQ folks making an effort to befriend their nieces, nephews that they like now, just to even create. So you may not have a circle right now. That doesn't mean you can't create one. That doesn't mean that it can't be part of what you proactively do in 26, is to create a circle. Doesn't have to be BFFs forever. We're gonna, retire together on a compound type BFF thing, but having a circle around you. Even if you're partnered for 47 years and you feel like that's your person and that's your circle, one person always passes first. Okay, so making more so marginalized communities need to have a circle around them, be it biological or chosen family. Actually make these documents usable. I don't know how many people come to me and then like it goes in a safe somewhere that they never touch. You actually need to have access to these documents if and when you need them. Okay, super, super important to actually have access to them if and when you need them. But do not share digitals with the people listed. Don't give these documents to your alternates. You don't want digitals out there in the world of your documents. If 7 years from now you want to change them, you have to ask those people to delete those digitals. And almost all of my clients update in 3 to 5 years. So having access to them, your people know where they live, but you don't actually share them. Too many estate planning attorneys don't actually tell you how to use these documents because 99% of estate planning attorneys only care about death and disability. Shocker, spoiler alert, you're going to die. It's going to happen once in your whole big long life, and you may never become incapacitated. That's my goal. Live my whole life and Thelma and Louise it off the cliff. Okay. But we need these documents in everyday life. So actually having access to them if and when you need them. Marriage proof packet. Certified marriage certificate, copies, certified, pay for them, order more, shrink one down, laminate it. Again, have access to it, upload it to the cloud with all of your other estate planning documents, adoption documents. I talk about that later. Name change order if applicable, updated IDs if you changed your last name, the SAVE Act and voting. If you change your last name by way of marriage, did you change your birth certificate? 84% of married folks do not actually update their birth certificate. So part of the SAVE Act to try to save voting fraud is really voter suppression, making sure you have your birth certificate, marriage license, showing name change as to why your ID does not match the birth certificate. Okay. Update your deed if you were married after you bought your house. A lot of my couples were been together 47 years. They got married 10 years ago. They already own their home. You own the home, joint tenants with right of survivorship, which is the only way you could. You need to update it to tenants by the entireties, which is only available to married folks. It's the holy grail of home ownership. Folks with families do not, we're married and we're on the birth certificate. Whoop-de-doo. That doesn't do you anything. You absolutely, the only form of parentage is an adoption decree. That is the only decree of parentage. There are those judgment of parentage, affidavit of parentage, again, which give you some, there's birth certificate, which gives you nothing. Confirmatory second parent adoption, which gives you everything, especially internationally. And they're looking to say that our families don't exist. So choosing the middle ground of the judgment of parentage, in my opinion, I would recommend do a confirmatory adoption in your state. Shrink down your adoption decree for travel, and then have emergency plans. Identity documentation and consistency. Employment, assume enforcement is going to be uneven. Keep private, and this is true of any employment discrimination, honestly. You only ever have a case when you get fired, so don't quit. Keep a private incident log with dates and details, save screenshot emails. This is true of today and for the last however long with employment discrimination. It just may become more important. Healthcare access. Identify at least one backup provider in your state and out of state, depending on whether you need gender affirming care or what your healthcare needs are. Keep a printed list of your medication. And store your records and documentation in a place that you can, again, easily access. And then ask your providers about continuity plans that they have for refills should anything happen. Housing and services, always, and again, this is true now, try to research affirming landlords in advance and or affirming cities and safe cities. Research the local protections before moving if you're going to move. And then digital safety matters more now than ever. Researching still the realities, the true, not just the, headlines, what you're seeing about TikTok, but like what's actually happening. My posts on TikTok aren't able to be shared, despite them being shareable and all of the things. So I'm doing more research on this. I have a meeting scheduled with Delete Me around, just what more can we do? You have TikTok and Instagram influencers having their global entry voided without their knowledge until they end up at a entry point with border control. So, how can we maintain digital safety? Obviously, we're out there. It is what it is. What we've done, we've done. There's no deleting anything on the internet, but what can we do to navigate life more safely and at least be informed? And I don't fully know, but I am getting educated on it. All right. Next legal Q&A is February 24th. Told you, record number of slides. They never go above 20. So 40 it is. We don't have a ton of time for questions, but I will stay later if you want to. Melinda, go ahead.
Hi, not necessarily a question, but I just want to share I'm sorry, my name's Melinda. I'm a financial advisor. What I share with my clients to do for their important documents is host them on a Google Drive. That way you can revisit your will, update it easily, make those changes, and change access to those documents. So get a cloud service, create a folder. Mine's called Death Becomes Her, and all my important stuff is in there. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Rowena.
So I've actually been seeing this since 2016, and as much as I screamed at everybody that, I hate to curse, but it's fucking drop your shit, because the Supreme Court was more important. I don't give a shit about Bernie Sanders. That was my whole trying so hard to explain to people what we're about to lose. But it didn't listen. And they think donating to Planned Parenthood would excuse their behavior to go voting for assholes. And at this point, that's why I'm separating myself from anything Bernie Sanders, anybody of those people. Because if Hillary had won, none of this would be happening. And they didn't understand that. So I told them they were trading free lunch for our rights. And that's what made me so angry. So my thing is, why aren't we able to create a foundation just as strong to fight against this?
Yeah, so you brought this up at the last one as well, and you absolutely can. I believe someone within the school community even reached out that has done self-insured type, foundations. So I recommend, looking into that and doing it and moving forward and keeping us updated on it. But it has been done with other marginalized communities as creating that self-insured sort of pot of money, if you will. And even, again, from an estate planning perspective, folks don't necessarily have well, we're about to go through the great wealth transfer, right, over the next 25 to 30 years or so. And upwards of minimally 77 trillion, and some say up to $125 trillion will be passed in the next 20 to 25 years. I am very direct with my LGBTQ clients when we're doing estate planning, and they're like, oh, everything to one another, if not to our siblings. And they're like 60 years old or whatever. And I'm like, do your siblings need money? And I will literally and they're like, I mean, no, one's a doctor, one's a this. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, yeah, maybe our nieces and nephews. I'm like, well, aren't they inheriting from the doctor? And if I can just in some way get them to do like 10%, 20% to an LGBTQ charity, the Trevor Project, I'm done funding impact litigation. We're not going to win in the court system. So I'm not funding impact litigation more so than I am funding the Trevor Project and other LGBTQ organizations that are helping folks stay alive, staying sober, staying just how can we help folks thrive and not just survive. And so then I have one client who's really moved by our whole conversation, and she went out and got a life insurance policy for $1 million, and because she doesn't have a ton of money, and her parents do need money. She died tomorrow, it's single mom, all the things, but she pays now $600 a year for $1 million, and she views that as her way of doing something. And if she passes away, $1 million is going to charity that she otherwise wouldn't have. So we all have a way, even if it's a creative way. She doesn't have $1 million. If she sold her house, at most, if she died tomorrow, she'd have $250,000. But she can afford $600 a year divided by 12. That's one cocktail a month at brunch. And that will give $1 million to an LGBTQ charity. So there are definitely creative ways that we can empower ourselves, marching, donating, voting, but ultimately money talks. Meg, nice to see you. It's been years.
I know. And actually my question's about since I've seen you years ago. So obviously with you in Jersey, we did a full adoption for Carly, right? When she was a little baby, just after we had started to figure out our move to Colorado. But
how old
since
is
then,
Carly now?
she's 10. She's 10, which is crazy. So she's still well protected, which is great. We also have a son named Alex now. He's 8. So we had him a couple of years after moving to Colorado. But what they recommended, what a lawyer here recommended for us to do at the time was a petition for maternity. And so we did do a petition for maternity for him here in Colorado, and that was successful, et cetera. What we didn't do is a full adoption because we were told that that was similar or equivalent. Is there anything else we need to do to make sure that he's fully protected? So I do have a petition for maternity, or I have a successful petition for maternity, which obviously does not negate Melissa's relationship to him. But is there something else we need to do?
There's nothing stronger than that's just Colorado's version of a judgment of parentage or an affidavit of parentage, or so again, birth certificate, then petition for of maternity, and then the confirmatory adoption.
Okay.
I always tell folks it's up to you for your threshold for safety, your level of privilege in the world, where you live, how you travel, where you travel, right?
Yep.
Do you have family in Texas that you're going to 3 times a year, right? Do you so depending on those things, it's not that you need the necessarily confirmatory adoption. And again, state law is all very specific. But I'm meeting with clients in New York around the same thing, having that conversation with them to determine between New York's judgment of parentage and the confirmatory adoption, what is best for them. One is super inexpensive. Like I think in Maine, it's like $50 you pay a filing fee. The other one's like $4,500, right? So 50 to 5,000, big difference, but like one's a court order, one's a court decree, as opposed to a state issued document, right? So that's the difference there. But we have co-counsel in Colorado, and I work with folks in Colorado. So, email me and we'll just continue that conversation offline. And if nothing else, you need to update your documents, for Colorado and to include Alex.
Yep, no, that's perfect. So that was my follow-up question, was if you had co-counsel here. So I will reach out to you.
All right, awesome. Good to see you, Mike.
Yeah, you too.
All right. I saw another hand. Kylie.
Hi, so I wanted to see if anybody has any ideas or resources for like how can I share this information that we're talking about with other people in the community and in my like close friends group who are just so overwhelmed by all of this that they just don't want to hear it. And I'm like specific, like I'm thinking of some of like my closest friends who are like immigrants, queer, like they haven't adopted, like the second mom hasn't adopted their child, like, but they don't want to hear it. It's too scary. Like, does anybody know a gentle way? Like, if I just send them the link to this, like they didn't join. And how do we do that?
I think you guys should answer that as opposed to me, because like from your guys' point of view, it's overwhelming, but you're still here. What are your thoughts?
We did a partnership with Angela, like a light partnership with Out Montclair. So we first did like a recommends with Angela's law firm. So we allowed like our community to join, and then it was up to them to sign in. But I did like a temperature read afterwards and reached out to everybody that did join to kind of see where their headspace was. And then most recently emailed them the school link as well as a follow-up. As far as people being overwhelmed at where they're at, like I get it. I had a meeting with Angela with my wife, and it was like not productive the first time. Angie was spinning. She didn't know how to like digest the information. But I think it's about being transparent where you're at. Angela was straightforward, and she was like, that's cool, come back to me. You need to figure this type of stuff out. In terms of talking to people that are directly affected, say like are immigrants and things like that, that's my wife's situation as well. I think it's about like softballing some of these issues. I personally take a couple of notes and then I drop them into our coffee conversations. Like, if you need more information, this community is here. You can't force anybody to digest something when they're not ready, but just like taking a few bits and pieces that are helpful and then offering the solution in that same conversation has been really helpful, at least for our community. But people will be ready when they're ready. And it's overwhelming. I listen and do other work and then go back later.
That's good. Thanks, Nicole. Go ahead, Melinda. What are your thoughts?
Hi. So I've always found it's your approach in a conversation. You can't send them a link. You can't send them an email, people that are overwhelmed. And the the place that you come from has to be compassion and love in the sense that they're overwhelmed. So acknowledging, I know you're overwhelmed. I get it. And I too have taken notes and will drop them in conversations. But if you want to sit down and have a conversation, it starts with, I hear where you are. Can we have just a 5-minute conversation about this right now? Are you in the headspace? I learned some really important key points.
Ava, what are your thoughts?
Well, I just, my wife and I have been together 27 years, married 11. I just lost her on January 10th, and we did not have our wills or any of our legal documents put together. We kept saying, oh, we need to do this. We need to find a LGBTQ lawyer. We follow Angela. We do, we kept saying, oh, we got to do this. We got to do this. And we didn't. And now my wife is gone, and we had no documents, nothing to protect myself.
Big hugs.
Thank you.
Amy.
I wouldn't wish this on anybody. So give that as an example to your friends, that things happen. My wife was perfectly healthy and she just died. So you got to plan, because it's going to happen.
Everyone send some love to Ava. We're all hugging you. Thank you, guys. All right, Amy, go ahead.
Wow. Sorry, Ava. Sorry to hear that. And big hugs to you again, as Angela said. And Angela, for you, this is your birthday song. It isn't very long. Okay, so moving on. This is for you to do a sales pitch. It was last fall when you actually did a presentation around where to move and healthcare and this or that. And you said you're going to do another thing around where to move, and hopefully it includes healthcare. Where are you going to do it? Are you going to use this platform for it? Are you going to use school? So could you give us your sales pitch on that one so we make sure we're there? Because we're sitting in Mexico right now exploring. So
which part of Mexico?
Merida.
I just got an email from clients that are there. They just settled in. We started their document process when they were still in Georgia. Then they went silent because of the move, and then we're going to finalize everything. But yeah, Merida is very, very LGBT. It's like the up and coming. Things are still affordable. All of the things. Highly recommend that part. So yeah. I'm thinking the school community is where we're going to do it. So if you're not in the school community, join school. And we've just never gone live through there. The reason why I say I think is Jen and I have this platform figured out. But there's like a button where it says go live. And so one day I'm just going to press it, whoever's there. And so, yeah, so Jen and I just need to figure out what going live in the school community means. This is easy because everyone who is on the LQA mailing list gets it. You know what I mean? So it would be more impactful to just do it through the LQA list. More people would have access to it than, the 100 folks that are in school. So I don't quite know is the answer. But so yeah. And the one thing that so healthcare was dealt with in that presentation. It was pets that I forgot to deal with. Right, Bodhi? I forgot to deal with you. Where can I take you? I don't know.
Thank you, Angela.
You're welcome. Phyllis, and then Kathleen.
So I just want to say thank you for having this, because I think it's very important for us to have these conversations to just protect ourselves and to protect our communities. And so what I've done, because I work in social work, so I'm used to having to have conversations that people don't really want to have. And so what I do is we do a monthly game night with me and kind of our like community. And kind of as everybody's like getting like settled in, coming in, trying to sit down and situated, we have those conversations. So that way, after we have those conversations, then we can kind of go into the game night part of it. So doing the business, but also the fun too as well, because nobody wants to talk about like their mortality. We hope that, we'll be here for our family and our partners and our kids and fur babies and all of that here forever, but that's just not the reality. And so sometimes you have to treat it like the elephant and like bite it like one like step at a time. So that way you're doing your best not to overwhelm people, but also holding space for the emotions that may come with unpacking that mortality that becomes a reality when you're having those discussions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Very well put. Kathleen.
Hey, thanks a lot for today. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'm married to someone who does not like to talk about this stuff. And I have other places where I can share the information I get here. But one of the things I did is I made a bath. I set up a tablet. I put on the video from YouTube on how to move. And my wife sat there and watched it. And that's what made a difference, is they actually got to know, hear something, and start to became willing to even talk about these things. And now we've started talking a lot about like the choices and making the move. And we're also looking at Merida, and in the meantime, like, we live in Texas. So and I have another place where I have access to a lot of people, and I have the ability to talk about hard things, including this. It's a queer community, and I've been breaking stuff down into bite-sized pieces so that I share a little bit, and I offer people, the school or social opportunities, to get the information directly from Angela, because I think that they do a great job explaining this. That's why I'm here. So that's my 2 cents today.
Awesome. Thank you. Nina, we'll go with you and then wrap up.
Hi. We were pretty proactive. My wife and I were pretty proactive when we got married, shortly after we got married, to get our estate planning together. The only thing that we have not done, which is kind of like, it's hard because it's a big financial investment for us, is to set up the revocable living trust to avoid probate. And since we got together, we've expanded. We have a ranch, we have livestock. It's like all that needs to be addressed, I'm assuming, as part of our estate planning as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so in the revocable trust piece, so why there are 9 documents as part of the LGBTQ specific estate planning is it also adds LGBTQ protection. So there's the estate planning reasons why we do things.
Yeah.
Proper estate planning, the goal of proper estate planning is probate avoidance, to your point. Then upon meeting every different person, every couple, how that couple or person avoids probate will be based on whether they have livestock and a ranch and a home, and you know what I mean? Like, so, but proper estate planning, the goal is probate avoidance. That's easy. We have been using marginalized communities generally. I mean, post-election ICE workshops that I did for restaurant owners that wanted to protect their undocumented workers. One document that I would give them 5 originals of is an estate planning document, the durable power of attorney. Right? If they get detained and nobody can talk to them for 9 months, like, who's paying their mortgage? They get out 9 months later, their lease is terminated, their stuff's thrown away. We've been using estate planning documents for decades as our number one impenetrable, inseverable line of defense to recreate marriages and all of the things. So yes, from the little bit, from 3 seconds worth of telling me about your assets, you need a revocable trust, hands down, from an estate planning perspective. And what state do you live in?
New Mexico.
New Mexico. So fairly good state. From the federal, right, benefits and that flow down from marriage, it then recreates so think about 50 years ago when we didn't have a way of forming a bond between one another, like the bonds of matrimony. And so being co-trustees, co-CEOs of one another's trust 24/7 creates an impenetrable, inseverable line of defense. And because the government knows probate sucks, they created it to make money. So they said every married couple, one of the 1,138 state and federal privileges tied to marriage, is automatic probate avoidance upon the first of you to die. So we'll give you one freebie because presumably you worked your whole life together to accumulate all of your assets. Why should one spouse have to wait on the other side of probate for everything from the other spouse when you accumulated it all together? So every legally recognized married couple, that's where the revocable trust is like, it just an absolute essential now, because 50 years ago, we didn't have that free probate. We didn't have that freebie. One person died, probate to the other. The other person died, probate, because we couldn't get married. Now we could be married, but just not recognized. So the revocable trust adds for probate avoidance and recreates a marriage, creates a bond between you two that is 100 times more powerful than marriage, because you're co-trustees of one, and it's inseparable. It's revocable by you only. So just because it's revocable doesn't mean it's penetrable. It is inseparable to everyone else, revocable by you. Everyone thinks we need a revocable trust. No, you do not. Okay, we need revocable. Go ahead.
And to throw the politics into this, I know that they turned down, is it Pam Davis? Whatever Davis is her last name.
Kim Davis.
Kim Davis. The Supreme Court's not going to hear it, which kind of protects Obergefell, but not completely. We expect other issues to come up with that or other cases.
Yeah, the Kim Davis was a red herring case. It was purely marketing, purely. They were never going to take that case. There was no way.
It was also money avoidance for her, but anyway.
Right. Exactly. It was a judgment. She didn't want to pay the 300 some odd $1,000. It was not. So when you saw the headline saying the Supreme Court upheld Obergefell, no, it didn't.
No, they just weren't going to address it in that case, but there could be another case that it's part of, correct?
That actually hits on Obergefell, right? And everything we just talked about here undermines Obergefell and renders it null and void ultimately. Like that's the new technique. Is you don't have to overturn Obergefell to render a marriage ultimately. The reason why you get married are the 1,138 state and federal privileges tied to it. We just went through all of those areas of life where they want to no longer recognize us. So wouldn't it stand to reason that all the federal benefits that flow to a married couple will only flow to a married couple made up of a man and a woman? A natural marriage, it's defined. Like we are there. We're setting the foundation for legal erasure now. Then you don't have to wait to overturn Obergefell. That's the reason for today. That's the critical, important piece of this whole thing is don't wait for massive headlines or bans or overturnings. We don't have to. They can get there anyways. Through this framework, through this manifesto, through definitions, using spending power as a way, and then litigation posture. All right, so we are way over time.
Thank you.
Joyce, go ahead. And then Rowena, if anyone wants to drop off, feel free. Love you all. And thank you for coming, and we will be in touch. No matter what, February 24th, but about when we will have additional webinars in between. Go ahead, Joyce. Oh, you're muted.
Okay. Happy birthday. I will be so quick. I am not a fan of dealing with this information with a loaded emotional content without a concrete factor. In other words, hope into action means a directory. Doesn't have to be a physical directory, but it does have to be something very clear in writing that has all of these things that you're talking about, so that the emotional factor is in the background. Here, I'd like you to look at this, pick out a couple of things that you think might be important for us at some point. Not now, at some point. And then you gently, but how do you say gently, but vigorously keep that directory on hand. Oh, we didn't look at that. We didn't look at that. I'd be happy to work with people that are interested in doing this because it's highly effective. It used to be more effective. I'm an old lady. Not really, but I am. So it used to be better when people only dealt with paper. Paper is somewhat passé, but there has to be a way to put this together and make it valuable to people that don't like emotional content, because dying is hard. Nobody really wants to talk about it. So
well, the dying piece, I feel like, is really easy. It just kind of happens.
Right, it happens, but the junk that goes
you don't
with
have to work at it. It just sort of happens. But
yes, but the junk that goes with it is horrifying.
Exactly.
So I would be happy to participate in anything like that.
Thank you. You want to put your email in the chat, and then anyone who wants to reach out can do so, and then go from there. Rowena, and then anyone else, and then we'll
Joyce, we're all getting old, and happy birthday, Angela. Sorry. It makes me angry because I fought most of my life for our rights, including marriage equality in New Jersey. So it's an emotional thing because in 2016, I cried for 2 weeks because I realized what was going to happen. And, I even sent Hillary Clinton some, sterling silver rose because I knew as much as she had fought and all the things that we all lost that day. And that's when I kind of gave up and I said, I'm putting down the sword. I'm just going to go with a different path. So Angela, my thing is, and Joyce, you're right. We need to have foundation to archive and have our whole collective come to it so that they understand collectively, not this pizza Tetris thing kind of fit everything together. We need our own foundation for our community overall, one foundation, not 10 or 20 or 50 flags. I mean, seriously, cut it out, and we need to unify at this point. I know I'm sounding angry because I am angry. All these things didn't need to happen, but we're here. So Angela, I'm asking if it's possible for you to, and I will work with you if you can email me to set up a foundation. I don't know anything about this, but I will try a way and figure out how to fund it. If you can set it up, I don't know anything legally. You're so informed, and I will create the ads. I will create the TV freaking ads. I will make it, I guess, edible. What can I say?
Yeah, I mean, I've formed foundations before. I've formed nonprofits before. So reach out, we'd form a foundation and then go from there.
Yeah, and then we could have I'm Victorian old school. I'm into paper. I'm into illuminated manuscript. I'm into these things because at some point, these people are going to buy up social media, including Google, and they're going to remove every single part of our content. So writing, let's go back to that. And I don't know, create scrolls. I don't care. But someplace that we have archives. And I'm totally Joyce up.
Well, and that's one of the biggest impetuses for creating the school community and having this off of social, is to the extent, I mean, social is good for what it is, but at the end of the day, all the wrong people own it. You know what I mean? And we need to be very aware of that. And it's being used to monitor us, and so we just need to be cognizant of it. So yes, email me, Rowena, and I'll walk you through the difference in a nonprofit and a foundation, the cost benefit analysis, like all of the things, and then go from there. I'm down. I have not yet had any trouble getting back into the country, but when I did hear about the one person who their global entry, so when I was flying back from LA, I got stuck in LA, and my ID, they were like, you need additional ID verification. And I'm like, I'm TSA pre-check, what do you mean? So then that person came to mind right away. And before I went to customer service, I sat down, used my hotspot, got on, looked at my global entry just to make sure that I still had it. And I did, but it was because my flight got canceled. And the woman who said it was basically just flight BS. But on a day when I'm like, what do you mean? Did I just lose my TSA pre-check? I was about to lose it. So yeah, I was hot there for a minute, but all is well. Um, all right. And then we'll also on the 24th, we'll talk about the Caravan of Hope. So Jody, Tara, do you want to turn on your screen if you can? If you can't, you just can say no. But Jody and Tara Jody is going to be the social media person on the Caravan. Tara, her
Sorry,
wife.
I was multitasking.
No worries. Tara is the driver. And yeah, they what's today? Tuesday. On Sunday, they went to go take a look at the Caravan, measure it for decals so we can gay it up and all the things. We leave March 1st. Anyone who's local, we're gonna have a drag show brunch at Bridget Foy's, and then leave. And then on the 31st will be the service day back in Philly, and then obviously all the stops in between. But we'll also take some time and talk more just about the Caravan of Hope at the next one. And in the school community, we need some help around just like reaching out to certain cities. So if anyone has bandwidth or time and feels like looking up groups and organizations in certain cities so we can reach out to them to help them get the word. The more people who know where we're going to be and when, the more people we can help, ultimately. So I'll put that in the school community as well. All right, it's almost 1:30. You guys are awesome. You rock. Youth, yes, Melinda, done and done. Bye, guys. Enjoy Merida. I'm jealous. See you, Carol Ann. Bye, Kylie. All right, bye, everyone.